Here we are. And just double checking here. Right, we've got confirmation in that we're actually now live. Welcome everybody at home who's watching, and you'll see on the screen here we've got the infamous Ritchie Pitt. I'll just do a quick introduction for you. So Ritchie's actually originally from Ryde, Sunderland. An England schoolboy international. He played in Sunderland's 1969 FA Youth Cup winning side before then manager Alan Brown handed him his first team debut in the Old First Division as a 17-year-old. That was a match against Coventry in March 1969. He would play another 6 games that season. In his second full season with the club, Pitt would make 18 appearances, which included standout performances at home to Nottingham Forest and Wolverhampton Wanderers. He would score his first of 7 goals for the club in a 3-2 home win over Blackburn Rovers in January of '71. Sunderland would be relegated to the second division that season, where they would remain throughout Pitt's time at the club, although they did flirt with promotion, finishing 5th, 6th, and 5th again in '72, '73, and '74, respectively. Pitt shall be best remembered for the 73 Cup run and that tackle in the FA Cup final. Richie, Alan Clark sends his best regards, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Sunderland of the second division would go on to beat Leeds United teams sitting in the top 4 of England's top flight. 1 second here. My notes have just exploded on the screen. That's excellent. There we go. And then I put on there, going to the cup final, Pitt was the only Sunderland player that had previously played at Wembley. As we all know, it was a huge win for the lads, and it was the last piece of silverware that had been won by the club. Rich, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Roker Report ran a poll a couple of years back, and that tackle put you in the top 10 hardest tackles of all time for Sunderland. You came in a respectable 6th place, so that's pretty good.
Oh, excellent. Well, that was me lucky number 6.
There you
so
go.
That was good.
Perfect. Ritchie is also one of a very select group of players who can claim that he's played for Sunderland in Europe. He travelled to Hungary in early '73-'74 season to face Vasas Budapest in the European Cup Winners' Cup. The lads won the away leg 2-0 with goals from Billy Hughes and Dennis Stewart. After a few more games and only in his early 20s, Pitt sustained a cruciate ligament injury which effectively ended his career. Pitt would officially hang up his boots at the beginning of the '74-'75 season. All in all, Pitt made no fewer than 145 appearances for his hometown club, making his mark on Sunderland football in history. Ladies and gentlemen, Ritchie Pitt. How are you doing, Richie? What are you up to these days?
I'm good, Diggsy. I'm good. I'm retired. I taught after I finished playing football. I taught for 35 years and retired about 5 years ago.
We've already got questions coming in. We've got one from Derek in Orlando. He's asking where you got your tank top from. He says it's absolutely class.
It's when I came back from Guernsey, when I was teaching in Guernsey, we came back in 1997, Angela and I and the family, and we started off the Sunderland former players with Jimmy Montgomery, Bobby Kerr, Jimmy McNabb, and so on. And these were the things that we ordered for when we played golf tournaments against other teams and stuff. So we've got a short-sleeved one for the summer and a long-sleeved one for the winter.
Spot
and
on.
sometimes we have to wear them both in the northeast of England.
You're not wrong there. You're not wrong there. So again, we mentioned before that you made your debut for the club at the age of 17. So when you, as a young player, where did you draw your inspiration from? And was there a player that you admired to the point that you tried to emulate them on the field?
Absolutely. I used to live on Plains Farm Estate, which was a council estate, until I was 6 years old. And my 2 uncles that I shared a bedroom with until I was 6, they were Sunderland fans. They took me to Sunderland when I was 6 years old. They used to put me on the fence at the back of the Fulwell end, and then they would go into the middle of the Fulwell end and bring me a cup of bovril and a pie at half time, and then pick me up at the end and take us home. And ever since then, I've been a Sunderland fan, and I'll be a Sunderland fan until the day I die, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But they used to, and the vivid memory I have of that time is standing on that fence at the back, and whenever we got a corner, they would shout "Charlie, Charlie, Charlie," and Charlie Hurley would come up for the corner. He was my hero. Little did I think at that time that I would be the one that took over from him when he left the club and retired. But Charlie was a fantastic player, and he really helped me when I first got into the team. He took me to his house in part of Sunderland in Grangetown, and we spent hour after hour in his back garden, and he would learn me the tricks of the trade, the little pushes, the little shoves, and so on. And he was excellent with me. He was fantastic.
That's class. What was the best advice you were ever given?
Oh, best advice. I think the best advice I got from Alan Brown was before every game, he would take me to one side, and because he was great with the young lads, and he would take me to one side and tell me who I was going to be marking it on the weekend. He give me his strengths. Like I remember playing against Malcolm MacDonald at Luton, and he told me he's got a fantastic left foot. If you let him onto his left foot, he can do some damage. So when you go to tackle him or when you go to hold him and make him force him onto his right foot. And I played against Malcolm MacDonald twice, and I did exactly the same thing twice, and he didn't score. So the best advice I got was look at your individual opponent and work out the best way to play him.
That's class. We've got a couple of other. Obviously, you mentioned before that you were a teacher as well. There's a lad called Lee Morris who's put a comment on here. He says that you were his PE teacher at Thornhill, and that you kept him right. Apparently, you dressed him down for swearing, but he said that you're a top man.
Good.
You might have.
I hope he's still not swearing.
You might have a few more on here today, Richie. I think so. So how did you come to join Sunderland then?
Well, from when I got picked for England schoolboys, actually I went to a county trial for Durham County, and the lad who was playing against us was a lad called Mahoney from Concert somewhere. He scored a hat trick against us, and I was terrible that day, so I didn't get picked for the county. The following week, I went for an England trial, played out my skin, got picked for England, played 6 times, and then when I came back, Durham County decided to pick me. So I played for England before I played for Durham County. As soon as you got picked for either Durham or England, obviously all the scouts were around coming to watch us. And Charlie Ferguson came from Sunderland. The only club I ever really wanted to sign for was Sunderland. So I had about 40 different clubs who approached me dad at various matches. And I signed schoolboy forms at the age of 14 for Sunderland, went training on a Tuesday and Thursday night, and signed when I was on my 17th birthday, because my dad wouldn't let me be an apprentice. He said I needed some educational qualifications. So I took my O-levels, started my A-levels, and on my 17th birthday signed for Sunderland. That was in the October 68.
Superb. So, well, that actually leads us to the next question here as well. I mentioned Alan Brown handed you your first team debut in the Old First Division as a 17-year-old against Coventry. That was in front of a crowd of 24,500 people. Do you remember much about that occasion?
I do. I was playing against Neil Martin, who previously played for Sunderland. We had a few old timers in the team. People like Gordon Harris, Calvin Palmer, Lenny Ashurst and Charlie Hurley. Well, Charlie didn't play. That's why I got my debut. I never actually played with Charlie. I only ever played in those first season when Charlie was injured.
Okay.
So yes, I remember the game. We got beat 3-1, and but I thought I'd handled Neil Martin reasonably well. I know he scored 1 goal with a header, but the rest of the game, I thought I did okay.
Oh, that's good. So you having made 145 career appearances, obviously you've faced many different players. Can you tell us who was the best opposing player that you faced?
Well, there was 2. We used to play in the Anglo-Italian tournament, and we went to Cagliari on Sardinia, and we played. I marked a centre forward called Luigi Riva, who was the Italian blue-eyed boy at the time. We beat them 3-1. He didn't score. There's a lot I could tell you about that game. It was horrendous. The there was one incident where Ian Porterfield got tackled, and there was a melee, and I went in, and somebody hit me, so I hit him back, and then I ran off. I mean, 17-year-old, so I was getting out the way of all these hard-faced Italians. So I ran to Joe Bolton, and I went behind Joe Bolton, and Joe Bolton went. It wasn't me. It was because 6 of them were chasing us by then. So I went to Monty, and Monty stepped out the way. So I ran behind the goal. 3 of them went one side, 3 of them went the other, and they cornered us behind the goal. They were pulling me hair and everything. And at the end of the game, it was an incredible tough game. But at the end of the game, we had to lie on the floor of the bus because the fans were throwing bricks at the bus. The windows were shattered. We had our coats over our heads, and we had to have an army escort away from the ground. It was fun, and it was only a friendly, basically a pre-season friendly.
Unbelievable.
Anyway, so Luigi Riva was one of them. The other one was the obvious one, George Best.
Mm-hmm.
We played against him at Old Trafford, and he tore us apart. I mean, his balance was just fantastic. When he runs at you, if you go to the right, he just changes his balance and goes to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And you never knew which way he was going. And he had a fantastic game. And I think I kicked about 3 off the line that day.
Yeah.
I was sweeping up behind Monty.
Again.
Yeah.
We've actually got another Sunderland legend on here asking questions, Paul Atkinson, who's already...
Oh, Paul.
He's
How you doing, Paul?
He's already declared his love for you in one of the comments, but he's asking what player in present-day football resembles your style of play?
Oh, good question. I always used to like the Chelsea left centre back.
John Terry?
John Terry. Yes, I always think I was a bit like him.
Mm-hmm.
Hard on the tackle, organising things at the back. And had I played longer than when I was 21, I would have hoped that I would have gone on and captained Sunderland at some point.
That's class. So similar to what I asked you before, there, the best opposing player. Who did you? Was any players that you had that didn't like against? Who did you dread facing going on the field?
I didn't like playing against Ron Davies at Southampton. He was so good in the air, and he was all arms and elbows. And I remember he put me into the little concrete pillow round the ground at one point, and I banged my head against this concrete pillar. I was flat out, carried into the dressing room for 5 minutes, brought round, and then pushed back out on the pitch. The other one was Wyn Davies at Newcastle. He was just so good. I played at St James's Park against him. We got a 1-1 draw, but I never got anywhere near him in the air. He was just fantastic.
So during your time with Sunderland, we've obviously experienced highs and lows like the rest of us. You had relegation, but FA Cup final, playing in Europe. And over those years, you lined up with some quality players, including, but not limited to, obviously, Montgomery, Harvey, Hughes, Kerr, Porterfield, Todd, Cheward, Horswell, Malone, Watson, Hallam, all legends. Who was the best player that you played alongside and why?
Initially, when I first got in the team, the player I played alongside was Colin Todd.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a fantastic player. He was a really good player. He was so quick over the first 5 yards. He could read it and intercept passes. He made my job. He looked after me really well when I first got in the team. Mm-hmm. But obviously, the obvious one was Dave Watson. Mm-hmm. Dave Watson was a super. You don't get nearly 80 caps for England without being a fantastic player. Mm-hmm. And it was a real pleasure to play alongside him.
Mm-hmm. Did you line up against any other notable players? Going back to your England youth stuff, was any young starlets in there that went on to be?
Yeah, the England schoolboys team, the under-15 team that I played at Wembley against Scotland, had some really good top players in. Mm-hmm. We had Steve Perryman, Tottenham. Mm-hmm. We had Tommy Taylor that played for West Ham. Cantello that was at West Brom. There was 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. Tony Towers that later came to Sunderland. Mm-hmm. There was 5 or 6 really good players. David Mills that mm-hmm. played for Middlesbrough. We had a really good team. Yeah. Unfortunately, we went to Berlin and we played against a German team that was a year older than us, which included Uli Hoeneß.
Mm-hmm.
And we got beat 6-0 in the snow in Berlin, in the Olympic Stadium in Berlin.
Wow.
But we played the same team 3 days later in Saarbrücken, and we drew 0 each.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly the same team.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned very quickly. But we had a really good team. That was an excellent team.
That's cool. So while at Sunderland, from a manager's standpoint, you worked with both Alan Brown and Bob Stokoe. Of the two, which one was the best to play under and why?
I don't think that was really a question I needed to answer, because I think you know the answer to that.
I know the answer, but I'm not sure if the rest of the people at home know.
When I first got in the team, Bob, Alan Brown was fantastic with me. He told me he was going to stick with me through the first 10 appearances. Doesn't matter, if you make mistakes, just go and do your best and enjoy it. And then he helped me in training so much. He had me, I'm not kidding, he had me running up against a vertical wall to improve my jumping ability. And I used to have a piece of chalk in my hand, and I had to beat the mark I'd made the previous day. Otherwise, I had to do like 20 sit-ups or something at the end. So he worked with me very closely, and he stood by me. And whatever type of player I became, I put that down to Alan Brown and Arthur Cox,
Mm-hmm.
who also helped me a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Stokoe, when he arrived, him and I, for some reason, just didn't get on. The first day he came training, we played against Nottingham Forest on the Saturday, and we'd drawn 0 each. That was when Billy Elliott was caretaker manager. And it was Billy Elliott that moved Dave Watson back from centre forward to centre half alongside me, because I'd previously played with Mick McGivern at the back, who was my best friend at the club at the time. And we had a good understanding, but he brought Dave Watson back because he wasn't scoring goals. So he brought him back as a centre half. The first day we drew 0 each with Nottingham Forest on the Saturday. And Stokoe came in on the Monday, gave us all a speech in the dressing room, and then pulled me to one side and told me to go and train with the youth team, even though we'd drawn 0 each, and I knew I'd done my job, to defend. So I went in to see him at the end of the session and asked him why, and he didn't give us a reason. He just said he didn't like us and he wanted us out of the club as quickly as possible. So he tried to sell me to Lincoln for 15,000. I met with Graham Taylor at a motorway service station. Can you imagine First Division players now, Premier League players, meeting at service stations to discuss a contract? Anyway, I met him at Washington service station, and when we went in, we got a cup of tea each, and we sat down beside these two old dears who were having fish and chips. So we had to just talk about the weather for about 15 minutes until they had finished the dinner and moved. And we got down to talking about contracts and stuff. And I turned Lincoln down because I thought I was a better player than to go into the 4th division. I had enough confidence in my ability. And I said to him I wouldn't. He invited me to go down to Lincoln. He made me a fantastic offer. He offered to give Angela and I a brand new 3-bedroom bungalows. I was signing on fee. But I said to him, look, I'm not going to mess you about. I'll go home and talk to Angela, and if we decide not to come, I'll ring you tomorrow morning, which I did. And he thanked us for being honest. Yeah. And I would have been Graham Taylor's first signing as a manager, which would have been special.
Definitely, yeah. So you mentioned about your confidence in your abilities. You actually managed to score 7 goals during your time with Sunderland. And most of these, I'm not even sure if you're aware of this, but most of these goals were actually early in the game, and they'll be the ones that actually typically put Sunderland ahead. So you normally score the first goal in the games. I don't know if you knew that.
The first one. Except the first one. The first one was a diving header against Blackburn. I didn't get many of them.
I did see that you scored a couple of own goals as well, but I know.
Yeah, well, like I say, I scored 10 that season, 7 in the right end and 3 in the wrong end.
Well, which one was your favourite goal? I'm talking about the ones that you scored in the right end. So which one was your favourite one and why?
I think the one against Bristol City. It was a corner, came out to the edge of the box. A defender came, I went round the defender, the goalkeeper came, I took it to the side and just slotted it in. But I always remember the Blackburn one, the diving header, with most affection because it was 3-2. It was the winner.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Sunderland pink at the time, where they had the
Yeah.
cartoon.
Yeah.
Argus did a cartoon of me doing the diving header, which I've still got to this day. So that was nice.
That's brilliant. I'm looking back here because I'm a bit of a nerd, so I was actually checking to see who you scored against: Preston North End, Bristol,
Yeah.
Millwall, Hull, Luton.
Hull City. Hull
Yep.
City was the winner as well.
Yep.
Dennis Stewart crossed it, and I hammered it in with my head from about 6 inches.
Here's here's
I
some.
was deadly from that distance.
So I don't know if you're aware of it, but Viv Busby was actually playing for Luton that day as well.
Was he?
Yes,
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
there you are. Some more interesting stats
Yeah.
for you.
You learn something every day.
Apparently. So I know things have changed. And again, talking to some of the lads who I played around at a similar time as yourself, I asked this question about what's the best stadia or football ground you've played in, best and worst. I know things have changed dramatically over the last 20 years, but what's for you? What are the worst and best grounds that you've played in, and why?
The best. Well, don't forget in those days the state of the pitches weren't as good as they are now.
Mm-hmm.
The best surface was Hull City and Middlesbrough.
Mm-hmm.
The old Roker Park was good, but when we played at Old Trafford, there was only grass in the four corners for about 10 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was a mud bath. So how George Best played so well, I'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
But the best ground, for the actual ground and the atmosphere, it was definitely Liverpool. Liverpool was, when we played at Anfield, it was just fantastic. I had a great story about Tommy Smith. We were lining up in the tunnel, and Tommy Smith, I was 17, remember, and Tommy Smith looks over to me and he goes, "I hear you're the hard man of the team." And I went, no. But we ended up, at the end of the game, he came over. About 10 minutes into the game, we did a tackle which we both went in really hard. And it ended up with both of us on the floor. We were kicking legs to try and separate ourselves. And he got up first and he bent over me, and I thought he was going to hit us. So I sort of flinched a bit, and he went, "Great tackle, son, great tackle." And he pulled me arm and helped us up. Honestly, I felt about 10 foot tall.
Yeah, brilliant.
And at the end of the game, he came over and shook hands, and we had a bit of a chat, and he was really nice.
Yeah.
Great fella.
So I'm going to start talking about the 73 stuff in a second, obviously.
Okay.
But Paul Atkinson has sent another. He says, "We all know that you're clever lad, Ritchie, but who was the thickest of the 73 team?" He says he has his suspicions.
Hey, Paul wasn't far off.
He's a nice lad.
Paul came onto the committee of the former players, and we had a great time. He's a good lad.
Yes.
Who am I going to say was the thickest? Me.
Oh, see, you went all Switzerland on us there. That's not good, that man. You said we could ask anything.
If I had to be ruthless, I would say Joe Bolton.
Joe Bolton.
But Joe Bolton was a great lad. Great lad. I remember one story. We played at Burnley, and Burnley were having a new stand built, and Joe was the one and only sub that day. And it was a really tough game. They had Fletcher, they had Mick Doherty in midfield. We were both in the top six, and Burnley kicked us off the park. I was Martin Fletcher up top, and Ron Guthrie got booked, and Ron lost he lost it completely, and they had a sort of 4-foot barrier from where they were building a new stand on that left-hand side where Ron Guthrie was. Well, Ron Guthrie had lost it, so they pulled him off and put Joe Bolton on at left back. As he came on, I said to him, "The right winger he's been really dirty. The first chance you get, give him some stick." Well, you know what Joe Bolton was like. Well, he hit him so hard, he went over this barrier and landed in amongst all the cement and the concrete. And it was like one of those cartoons where you see so the hands, and then the face comes above the. And Joe got booked for the tackle because he really hit him. And on the way back because they got the free kick, and on the way back to the middle, he goes, "Was that all right, Richie?" I said, "That was great, Joe, perfect." Anyway, we got beat 2-0, but it was a great game. It stands out in my memory for being really physical and enjoyable.
Well, let's go to the 73 Cup run. So
Yeah.
had a bit of a shaky start to that Cup run, if you remember. But the team did seem to like gel and gather momentum. So put some great performances in. Now, outside of the final, which was your favourite game and why?
Well, because I didn't play in the third round against Notts County. I didn't play in the first game of the fourth round because Stoker was trying to sell me to Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
So for the replay at Reading, when Charlie Hurley was manager of Reading, Arsenal had come in for me on loan, and Bob Stoker had said to me, "We're going. Do you want to go on loan to Arsenal?" Well, of course, Arsenal's a fantastic club,
Mm-hmm.
so I jumped at the chance, knowing that Bob Stoker didn't want me,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, "Arsenal want to take Keith Coleman as well, but only if you go." So Keithy and I travelled with the team for the replay. The team got off the bus. Keithy and I sat in the bus and played cards for about half an hour, and then we decided to wander in. When we got into the changing room, there was no warm-ups in those days, remember. You went out like 2 minutes before the kick-off, and you had a quick kick and a quick header and lined up. So we went into the dressing room, nobody there. So we presumed they were out on the pitch. When we went out the tunnel, they were all in the penalty area. So Keithy and I said to him, "Oh, let's just stand in the centre circle." So we stood in the centre circle. Stoker walked over to us and he said, where's your gear, lads?" And I said, "Well, they're on the bus. We're ready to go to Arsenal. Dave Smith's picking us up after the match." He says, "I know that, but you need your kit." And I said, "What for?" He said, "Well, you're playing to me, and Keithy, you're sub." So I said, "Well, we haven't trained with the first team since you came to the club. Why are we playing tonight?" And he said, "Because I want to cup tie you both in case you go to Arsenal." So the only reason I played in that match was because I was going to Arsenal after the match. As it turned out, we won 3-1. I played really well. I went off to Arsenal. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. But we played Chelsea reserves for Arsenal reserves on the Saturday. I was marking Tommy Baldwin. We beat Chelsea reserves 2-0. I played out my skin. I came back home on the Sunday because Angela was about 3 weeks away from expecting our first child, our Louise. And the phone went on the Sunday lunchtime, and it was Billy Elliott who told me that the loans had been cancelled because the Sunderland scout in London had watched the match and had played so well, they wanted me back for the Middlesbrough game the following week.
Mm-hmm.
As if they didn't know what I could do at that time.
So I guess I was saying outside of the cup final, what was in the FA Cup run, which was another favorite game you had?
I think the semi-final, because nobody really remembers who loses in the semi-final, and we were playing one of the best teams in the country. We'd already beaten Manchester City, who were the favourites. We played Arsenal, who had a team full of international at Hillsborough, and the Sunderland fans were fantastic that day. It was a great atmosphere. And once you win the semi-final, at least you know you're going to have a day out at Wembley. So for me, what stands out is that game against Arsenal, because then, we beat them, we played really well, and we knew we were going to have a fantastic day at Wembley, which a lot of the lads hadn't played there. Well, all of them, apart from me, hadn't played there before.
So you mentioned a little bit about Arsenal there. How did all that come about though? But possibly you go to Arsenal, because I know you mentioned. I know it's ironic that they actually played them in the semi-final. Was there
Yeah,
any?
well, that's because I'd played against Reading. I wouldn't have been able to play. If I'd gone to Arsenal, I wouldn't have been able to play because I'd have been cup tied. But Stoke just called me in and said, "Do you want to go to Arsenal? They want you on loan for a month with a view to signing you permanently after that." And actually, when I didn't sign, they went and signed Jeff Blockley from Coventry, who, as you remember, played really badly in the semi-final, and Vic Hallam harassed him and scored the first goal. So, I mean, he wouldn't have done that if I'd been playing against him. But so we went to Arsenal on the Thursday morning after that replay, and Dave Smith took us to see Bertie Mee, who was the manager, and we walked into Highbury, up the marble stairs, into Bertie Mee's office. And at the time, I was on £40 a week, and Keithy Coleman was on £25 a week. So we went in, and Bertie Mee sat us down. We talked general chit-chat, and then he said, while you're here, boys, he says, I'm going to double your wages. So he said to me, so you're on £40, you'll be on 80. Keithy, you're on 25, you'll be on 50. And I said to Bertie Mee, tongue in cheek, really, well, that's not fair, so we should both be on the same amount of money. So Bertie Mee smiled and he went, all right, okay, you can both be on 50. And I said, no, that's not what I meant. So he said to us, but that's only fair, you're both on the same, you're both on 50. I said, no, I think we should both be on 80. So he laughed and we sort of had a few chats, and he said, okay, he says, I'll put you both on 80 for a month. As soon as we got outside, Keithy turned around and picked us up off the ground and said, I've gone from 25 quid to 80 quid in about 10 minutes. So he was chuffed to bits. But as I say, we trained with them, we went straight to training. And as you know, Arsenal at the time played offside every time they were down to a man. They knew exactly when to move up and play players offside. Keithy played at right back. I played in the centre. Nelson, I forget his first name. Sammy Nelson. Sammy Nelson was left back, and Brendan Batson was in the middle with me, who later went on to be PFA chairman. Anyway, the four of us, we spent 2.5 hours working on offsides to be able to play against that Chelsea team on the Saturday, and I've never been so knackered in all my life after that, because we were up, we were down, we were back, we were forward, and so on. But it was a great experience going into the dressing room with Charlie George and Alan Ball and all these fantastic players, and it was a great experience. But it only lasted 3 days. But having said that, you know, if it hadn't been cancelled and I'd gone to Arsenal, I wouldn't have had the experience of playing in the FA Cup and having an FA Cup winners' medal, which George Best hasn't got, by the way.
Yep. One of your another one of your former pupils, Paul Williams, is asking, what's the square root of 365?
Tell him I was a PE teacher, not maths.
I thought you might have known that. And there's another lad as well on here, Simon Telfer, who's up in Canada. I know the answer to this now, but he's asking if you have any relatives actually in Canada. I know the answer to this, but
yes, I do. My daughter and her family live in Toronto, and she lived in New York for 14 or 15 years, and last summer she moved to Toronto with her job, and Angela and I went over and drove up, helped her to drive and move up to Toronto. Excellent. From New York last summer.
Brilliant. All right, so the cup final itself, you've obviously played at Wembley before as an England schoolboy, but can you actually
don't ask the score?
Well, no, I won't. Can you talk?
I'll tell you. We played Scotland. Played Scotland in a friendly, and Tommy Taylor whacked the ball against me, trying to clear it off the line, and it hit me and went in the back of the net, so I scored an own goal. We got beat 2-0. 3 days later, we played them at Old Trafford and beat them 3-0. So The only time I'd been to Wembley was to get beat 2-0 against Scotland.
You put that right though. You put that right.
We did.
Yeah. Well, can you talk us through the occasion, like the FA Cup final itself? I mean, what was it like to represent your hometown club in the cup final?
Oh, well, it's every schoolboy's dream, isn't it? You know, you play in the schoolyard, and whoever your hero is, you say, yeah, it's gone in. It's the FA Cup final, and we've just won the FA Cup for Sunderland, and everybody dreams of playing for your hometown club. You did in those days. I'm not sure they do that these days, but there will be some exceptions. It was just a real pleasure for me. It was fantastic for me as a young lad. It was fantastic for the supporters, and it was fantastic for the town, you know, because everybody seemed to enjoy the day. And the number of people that have come up to me since and still remember the day and remember what they were doing, where they were. And it obviously has given a lot of people a lot of great memories.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I want to try and do one thing here while we're on. I don't know if this will work or not. I'm going to try. I've got a question from a lad called Steve Milburn, and he's asking a bit about the Alan Clark tackle, whether it was planned or not before the match started. Did he actually plan it, or was it?
Yes, it was sort of semi-planned. Dave Watson and I were standing in the centre circle about 2 o'clock when we went out on the pitch.
Yeah.
And Arthur Cox came over, and Arthur said to us, have you decided which player you're going to be marking today? Because they had Mick Jones, who was really good in the air, and Alan Clark, who was really good on the ground. So I said to Arthur Cox, well, I think Dave Watson's better in the air than me. So Dave Watson should take Mick Jones and I'll take Alan Clark. And he said, yeah, that's what we thought. The staff have been talking, and we thought that would be a good combination to do. But he said, Mick Jones, if you hit Mick Jones, he'll come back for more. He's really brave. But Alan Clark, you know, maybe you should just let him know that you're there the first chance you get, but not within 25 yards, because we don't want Lorimer lashing one in the first 10 minutes, because he had a fantastic shot from a free kick. So the first chance I got fortunately was about 30 seconds. And I didn't go, to be fair, I didn't go out to hurt him. I just wanted to let him know that he was in a game and that, you know, maybe he would be looking for me the next time. And I did 2 or 3 tackles on him in the first 10 minutes. And it must have worked because he didn't score. He didn't really look dangerous. And he was the only Leeds player to get booked that day. And he got booked in the right back position, tackling Billy Hughes. So I must have done something right.
I've just been while you were talking there. I'm actually hopefully showing this live at home as well.
I can see it. Yeah, I can see it.
He's definitely knackered there.
But Degsy, it was raining. It was really slippy.
Oh yeah.
And it was a complete nutter accident.
Is that what you said to the ref as well? Because he had a quick chat with you. What did he say to you?
Didn't he? The referee just wagged his finger at us, and I got out of the way as quick as I could.
That's class, that, like.
I think I would have been sent off in the warm-up these days.
Well, there's no doubt about that. Have you got any other memorable moments of that day? I mean, you're collecting.
I can remember virtually every minute of the day. I'll tell you one thing: the whole week was an up and down thing. One funny story. About 6 of us decided to go to Carnaby Street on the Wednesday afternoon because a lot of us hadn't been to London or Carnaby Street before. So we went and Dennis Stewart bought this flash pair of shoes, and I saw this nice long checky coat, and I paid, at the time I was on 40 quid a week, and I paid 35 quid for this coat, which was a week's wages virtually. So we got to the game on the Saturday, and I hung my coat up on my peg in the dressing room, and Mickey McGivern, who was my best mate, was on the bench. And as you know, it was raining when we first went out. So Mickey said to me, Richie, can I borrow your coat? I said, yeah, of course you can, Mickey. So went out. He went out in my coat, sat behind the bench where Stoko and Billy Elliott were, and he sat with Joe Bolton and Trevor Swinburne, the other lads. And then the sun came out after 10 minutes, so he took the coat off, put it over the back of the chair, and at the end of the game, with all the celebrations, we got back in the changing room, had the shower and everything. I says to Mickey, "Where's me coat?" "Oh," he says, "I've left it on the seat." So the pair of us went running out the tunnel, round the outside, back to where they were. Of course, the coat had gone, hadn't it? So I've never seen it since.
It's funny you mentioned coats and dress sense. Paul Atkinson's back on again there. He said, did you get your dress sense from Michael Portillo? Colourful attire.
I'm surprised he knows who Michael Portillo is.
Well, he's old enough.
That's true.
So we're talking again. We've just mentioned about memorable moments there. What do you consider to be your worst performances or experiences that you had during your career?
Oh, I played Stoke City in a League Cup match.
Mm-hmm.
The centre forward, I can't remember. Ritchie. John Ritchie, was it? John Ritchie.
Oh.
Anyway, he scored a hat trick, and he absolutely bullied me out of the game. I was either 17 or 18-year-old. We got beat 5-1. He scored a hat trick. We went straight from Stoke down to Millwall to play Millwall on the Saturday in what is now the Championship, and I got dropped, so I sat in the stand for the rest of for that game, and they won 1-0 against Millwall, but that was horrendous. I had a terrible game that night. It was absolutely chucking it down with rain,
Mm-hmm.
the same as it was when we played in Budapest.
Mm-hmm.
The heavens opened that night,
Mm-hmm.
and but I played better in Budapest than I did in Stoke.
We've actually you've just segued into the next question here as well. And so, what was it like to play in front of
I can read your mind.
What was it like to play at Budapest in front of a sold out crowd?
Oh, fantastic! I mean, to be in the only team that's played in Europe for Sunderland is a great honour, and it just adds to the list. Really,
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed every minute of it. We played really well that night. You know, we didn't really know what to expect because we'd never played in Europe before, and we went away. It hammered down the whole night. The pitch was virtually flooded by the end of the night, but we beat them 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
We came back, and it was the next game against Luton when I got injured, so I didn't play in the second leg, and I didn't play against Sporting Lisbon. And the only problem with that was because we didn't get paid when we walked out at Wembley against Leeds. Our contracts were only appearance money, so we got £1,000 for walking out, but we didn't get a penny for winning.
Mm-hmm.
So financially, it didn't matter whether we won 1-0 or lost 10-0.
Mm-hmm.
We still just got the £1,000 appearance money.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the way, at the time, everybody was getting taxed at 84% because the Beatles and the Stones were moving all their money, out of the country because they didn't want to get taxed. I got taxed at 84%. So out of the FA Cup final, I made 160 quid. Plus me 40 quid basic. So
Yeah.
I got 200 quid for playing in the FA Cup final. Anyway, what was the question again?
I was asking about Budapest, wasn't I?
That's right, Budapest, yeah. Great experience. I just wish I hadn't got injured against Luton, and then I could have played against Budapest again at home, and then against Sporting Lisbon. And maybe if I'd played against Sporting Lisbon, we might have got past them because they were two tight games.
Yeah. Another lad on here, Andy Brown, apparently he used to be his teacher as well.
Okay.
And he said he seems to remember that you were good at basketball as well.
No, he's got a bad memory. I was terrible at basketball.
I'm not sure if
I played a couple of times for the school team because Alan Thompson, who was our head of PE, he ran the Sunderland basketball team.
Right.
So I had a few games of basketball, but
no.
Yeah. I preferred me football and cricket.
Aye. So other than football wise, other than Sunderland, was there another club that you would really wanted to play for?
No.
No.
I after the England-Scotland game at Wembley, we went back to Manchester to play Scotland on the Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
After the match on the Wednesday, we went to the Manchester Town Hall to get our England caps and our certificates and everything. And a representative, I won't name him, a representative came up to me dad and asked him if I'd signed for Sunderland yet, and he said no, I hadn't. And he offered me dad £5,000 and a brand new Ford Capri. Now, don't laugh. A brand new Ford Capri if I signed for Manchester City the following day.
Was it a gear, a Capri gear?
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't into cars at the time. I am now, but I wasn't then.
I would have taken the car.
I guess my dad would have taken any brand new car. But anyway, he said, "Look, I'll talk to Richard on the way home." And I just said, "Look, Dad, I just want to play for Sunderland." The next morning, Charlie Ferguson knocked on our door 8 o'clock the next morning and offered me some terms to stay at Sunderland, which I did, because that's the only team I ever wanted to play for.
Brilliant. This is fairly unique here. We've got a request from, I pronounce his last name here, Will Mangan, I think his name is. He says his dad, Ray, will be watching this late in the week. He wants to know if you'll just say a quick hello to his dad, Ray.
Hi, Ray. How are you doing? Hope all your family is safe.
That's
awesome.
Hope
everything's good with you.
Brilliant, mate. Thank you. Right then, to this current Sunderland team. This is always, I know I always enjoy talking to you about this. Which of the current Sunderland team, is any specific players that you enjoy watching in the current team?
No.
All right, that was easy.
There isn't one of this team that would get anywhere. They wouldn't get near our reserve team.
Yeah. All right.
I just think it's so sad the way the club is. I'm a Sunderland fan. I'm a season ticket holder. I go to every home game that I'm here with my cousin Frank, who we both have been Sunderland fans, since we were 6-year-old. And the state of the club now it just demoralises me. I'm so sad for them because, to be honest, the fans deserve better than that. The fans are fantastic. 30,000, 40,000 on Boxing Day for a third division game. Incredible.
Yeah.
They deserve much better than this. Hopefully it'll improve shortly.
Where do you think they've gone wrong then, Ritchie?
Well, there's two things that I think have sort of got them into the situation where they were now. I really liked Ellis Short when he was chairman. I know a lot of the fans won't because they don't know what's gone on in the background. But Ellis Short was fantastic with me, with my family, and he put a lot of money into the club. He lost heart because a lot of people took him to the cleaners for the money that he put in. And I think one of the main things was when Ellis got rid of Niall Quinn. If we'd kept Niall Quinn, I think we would never have been in this situation. Niall Quinn was a football man. He knew what he was doing. And for whatever reason, Ellis got rid of him. Only them two know between them really what went on. But it was a sad day for Sunderland, I think. The other one was when we had Allardyce as manager. Now, I'm not a great fan of Allardyce as a person, but as a manager of Sunderland, he brought in 3 great players in January, and we were moving in the right direction. And if he hadn't been taken away by England, towards the end of the transfer window that summer, I think Sunderland would never have got relegated that season.
We've got requests
of course, relegated from the Premiership, snowballed into relegation from Championship as well. And Allardyce would never have let that go.
No, it's just interesting to see where we've ended up now, though. I mean, even obviously we talked about this yesterday, about the new ownership and everything that we expected to come out of that, which hasn't come to fruition. So it's just been disappointment after disappointment, unfortunately. You just think that it can't get any worse. But I know we're waiting to hear from the league about what's going to happen with this season. I think it's written off now, but will be interesting to see. Once that's finalised, where we end up. I hope
it isn't. I hope it isn't written off because Sunderland are 7th at the moment.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be involved in any playoffs or anything like that.
Mhm.
So it's just gonna resign us to another season in League One,
Mhm.
which this is a great club. It's got a great history,
Yeah.
great tradition. We shouldn't be down there. And to be honest, the current owner and Charlie Medvin, who left and took over, they haven't produced the goods. They haven't put the money into the club
Yeah.
that we need. It's very difficult because we're still spending a lot more money than any other club in the league,
Mhm.
but we haven't produced the results that spending that amount of money
Mhm.
and bringing the type of players in that we should have brought in. I mean, when you watch that second documentary and the way they went after the Will Grigg
Yeah.
transfer. Now, Will Grigg, I would have loved to have been earning 40 grand a week to mark Will Grigg. He's got no physical presence whatsoever
Mhm.
and scores tap-ins.
Mhm.
Well, I'm sorry, but he's not a footballer that's going to get you out of League One.
Mhm.
So, to me, when they let uh, when they let Madja go
Mhm.
to Bordeaux,
Yeah.
that was a big
Yeah.
mistake. But they should have spent that 2 million on giving it to Madja
Yeah. There's
and keep him, because he would have got us out that division that season. He had 15 goals to Christmas.
yeah.
He would have got another 15 and would have been clear of everybody by then.
There was a lot of blame. I talked to Charlie about this a while back. There was a lot of blame given to the previous regime about specific contracts and stuff that weren't renewed early
Yeah.
enough, and how the kids had been signed on, all that kind of stuff. There's just a lot of blaming going on. But I agree with you 200%, Richie. I mean, if we spent
The
that money
club,
wisely.
the club was badly managed
Hmm.
for 5 or 6 years,
Hmm.
possibly longer. I don't know, because I wasn't privileged to what was going on in the background.
Hmm.
But it appeared to me that a lot of bad decisions were made. Bad contracts were given for 5 and 6 years. Some contracts did have clauses in for relegation.
Hmm.
Rodwell's didn't. That was a massive mistake.
Yeah.
And there's probably 100 different things.
Yeah.
But if you'd had a footballing person in charge like Niall Quinn, none of that would have happened.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It looks like Will started some sort of a trend here. We've got another request come in now. Can Richie say happy birthday to my dad, Eddie, who turned 84 on Wednesday and was at all the 73 Cup run matches, including the semi and the final? He's a massive,
Oh,
massive fan. That's Eddie.
fantastic. Hi, Eddie. How you doing? Happy birthday, pal. I hope you enjoyed all the matches in the cup run, and I'm sure they gave you some great memories, like they did with me. Have a great birthday. Well done, pal.
Oh, cheers, Richie. That's excellent, man. Is there anything else you want to add, Richie,
No,
before we
I
sign
don't
off?
think so. I think we've covered everything. Do you want me to finish with one of the funniest stories that I
Absolutely.
have?
Absolutely.
All right. When we played Manchester United at Old Trafford, when we came out at the end of the game, we'd lost 3-1, and the bus was about 20 yards away. And at the time, there was no barriers up or anything. You just pushed your way through all the fans, some of which were Sunderland fans, some which were Man United fans, to get to the bus. So I came out, and after I'd signed a few autographs, this little lad with a flat cap on came and stood in front of us and said, "Oh, mister, will you sign me book for us?" I said, "Yeah, of course I will." And I just flicked his cap off. His cap went flying up in the air. So I signed his book and gave him it and made me way to the bus. Got halfway there, and here's this little lad again. He said, "Will you sign me book, mister?" I said, "Of course I will, son." He says, "But I've already signed it once." He says, "For me brother. One for me brother." I says, "Okay." So I signed his book. Got to the steps of the bus 5 minutes later, and here he is again. So he said, "Mister, will you sign me book again?" I said, "I've already signed it twice. Have you got another brother after that?" He says, "No." He says, "I can swap 3 of yours for one of Bobby Charlton's."
That's class. That's brilliant. Richie, honestly, mate, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I want to thank you for your time and service to the club. As I said, it's always a pleasure, mate. And I'll catch up with you when I'll come back home. We'll have
All
a
right.
grab a pint.
Thanks for the invite.
Oh,
I've really enjoyed it, Diggs.
yeah, it's been brilliant. Thank you, and I want to thank the viewers as well.
Thanks to everybody for listening in.
No, I appreciate it. Just want to also remind people, like next week, we've actually got Gary Bennett on, and we'll be joined by Newcastle and Gateshead Black Cats co-founder and another former pupil of Ritchie's, Stephen Williams, next week. So,
All right.
who,
Good luck with that one.
I love Stevie. He's the nicest of the two brothers. That's what we tell Paulie all the time. He's the nice one. So, but hey, Richie, thanks very much again. I really appreciate it. Stay
You're
well,
welcome,
stay
Diggsy.
safe, and
Anytime.
best to Angela as well, mate.
Yeah, all the best.
All right,
Bye.
take care. See ya.
Bye.
Bye bye.